Hey there folks, my name is Caleb Downing, and today, real quick, I'm going to go over my testimony of how I became a Christian, how I got saved, and how all that transpired. We're going to do it real quick. I'm not going to go into a whole bunch of details and everything, but just kind of give you a general overlay of how it happened for me. Alright, so I was thankfully born into a very Christian family, and put it that way. Really, a very solid Christian family. So I'm very blessed, I'll put it that way. I am very, very blessed. We went to church from ever since I was born. We were always in church, Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday, special activities, stuff like that. But that didn't get me saved. Even though my parents were good folks, that didn't get me saved. I got saved whenever I was watching my sister work on her Awana memory verses. Now, I do not remember the exact verse that it was, but I remember it had to do with salvation. It had to do with people going to hell and people not going to hell. And it kind of scared me. And I was like, what in the world? And I knew of God. I knew God, but I didn't understand what in the world this whole thing was about. So I talked to my folks. They explained things to me. I prayed. And I believe at that time I got saved, right? Fast forward about 6 more years, because I got saved when I was 6, around 6 years old, something like that. Around 6 more years later, again, since I was in a good, godly Christian family, I didn't get pulled out of, like, terrible things, drugs and gangs and violence and just evil, whatever. I didn't get pulled out of that. We continued doing the same things that we were doing. So I didn't see a big, huge, drastic change in my life, okay? So because of that, or partially because of that, I always had a thing in the back of my head nagging at me saying, are you really saved? Like, is your life isn't like, you're not a missionary in Cambodia or something. There was always that doubt that was there. And so again, whenever I was around 12 years old, something like that, give or take a few years, I was having all these doubts. I prayed pretty much every night asking, to just be sure I'm saved, right? And finally it got to me, and I talked to my mom, and she kind of walked through the whole thing again about what you need to do to be saved. You've already done this, but this is, have you done this? Do you believe in Jesus? Do you trust in him? And I was like, yeah. And so we prayed again, and that was just a reassurance of salvation. That's Christianese for that. That's a reassurance of salvation. I don't believe I got saved then. I believe I was already saved, but that was just a peace of mind. And now fast forward, that was 12, so like 15 years later, pretty much, something like that. I really started studying more and getting more interested in spiritual things, we'll put it that way. And a person that has really influenced my spiritual worldview, really influenced that, is Dr. Michael Heiser. He has rocked my spiritual world completely, all right? In a very good way. In a very, very good way. Very good way. And something that he has said that has really stuck with me now, and is something that I adhere to, and I truly believe it, is that being saved, that is a believing loyalty in the reputation of who Jesus is, of who God is. It's a believing loyalty. I had that when I was 6, because once I realized that I need to be loyal to God, to Jesus, I need to follow Jesus and be a Christ follower. Once I made that realization and that connection, I believe I was truly saved then. It's no things that we do, because things aren't going to save us, because we're all sinful human beings. We're all sinful, right? So there's no thing that I could do. A special prayer is not going to save you. You can do rosaries, you can count beads and necklaces and stuff. That's not going to save you. It might give you warm fuzzy feelings on the inside, but that's not in the Bible. Saying prayers isn't going to help you, right? Believing in Jesus is what is going to save you. The perfect example of this is the thief on the cross, right? And when Jesus was dying on the cross, he had 2 thieves next to him dying on crosses themselves. One completely denied him and mocked him. The other one recognized Jesus as a man, as God, and as perfect. If you realize that, if you look into that story, he hits every single major thing. He never says a prayer. He never does good deeds because he dies right there. He never has this change of whatever as far as like changing his life around and turning around and doing these things. No, he died. He died being punished for his sin, and put it that way, being punished for sins, for crimes and things that he had committed. But he saw who Jesus was. He recognized him for who he was, for being the God-man, 100% God, 100% man, and perfect, and recognized who that was. And he believed him and he trusted him. That was the difference. The other person, the other criminal on the cross, we don't have any record that he trusted and believed in Jesus at all. He knew who he was, but he disregarded the whole thing. And so there you have a very black and white picture of one person who denies Jesus and another person, a terrible person, a criminal, dying, believing and trusting in Jesus, and having confirmation from Jesus himself that he is saved. So anyway, that's the whole thing, believing loyalty. I really, really adhere to that. It makes a lot more sense, because what happens if you try to lead somebody in a prayer and you're like, wow, did we say the right things? Well, more importantly, do they know what they're doing? Do they know who God is, and do they have a loyalty belief in Jesus? If they do, their words can get all fumbled up and all messed up, but it doesn't matter because it's a heart thing, right? Anyway, that was some rabbit trails and things, but I think it's pretty important, and it really sticks with me, and that gives me the confirmation that I need in my own life to say, yes, I truly am saved, right? I truly am saved. And I don't adhere to doctrines and things that say that you can lose your salvation. If you're saved, it's because of something that Jesus did. It's nothing that you did. You believed in him and you trust in him, yes. You claim him as your God. You decide, I'm going to worship this God, none of the other gods. This is my God, right? The Bible says that once you do that, God has you in his hand, or Jesus has you in his hand, God has you in that hand. You're not getting out of that. It's a binding contract, as it were. You can't be getting out of that. So I don't believe in losing salvation and things like that. I believe people will deny Jesus and walk away, and there's different terms and things for that. And the Bible does say that, possibly some people do die outside of their time because they turn away from God. They become a bad example, right? And they start leading other people away from God, and God says, no, that's enough's enough. You're going to stop that, and he takes you home, as it were. So I do believe in that, but I don't believe that you're going to be losing your salvation, right? The unpardonable sin is simply not believing in who Jesus is, because that's unpardonable. If you die in your sin, not trusting, believing in Jesus, you're not going to go to heaven. Straightforward. The Bible says that Jesus is the only way to get to heaven. No works, no things, no prayers, no religion, no structure of things, no prophet, right? No angel. Nobody else can get you there. Only Jesus, who is God, 100% God and 100% man. All right, guys, so that is my testimony. That's how I came to know Jesus and came to follow Jesus. I'd love to know your story. If you are saved, when did you get saved? What were the circumstances surrounding that? Did you have one of those life-changing experiences? A lot of times that happens later on in life, where you've been living your own thing, doing your own thing, and then you realize who Jesus is and what he's done, and you choose to follow him. And then that's when people generally see a radical life change a lot of times, versus the really young salvations like what I had, which I'm very grateful for that. Very grateful for that. I wouldn't have it any other way. But those people who have an interesting story to tell of coming out of some kind of terrible situation, those are very interesting. But anyway, and those can be very encouraging. It's going to be very encouraging and gives you a very, very, very powerful testimony. So I'd love to know if you are saved, what's your testimony? And if you're not saved, have you ever thought about it? Have you ever considered what salvation is, what Christianity is, and who Jesus is? Think about it. Pray about it. Read the Bible. It's a good thing to do, right? It'll save you. Save you from a lot of pain. That's it. Y'all be good to be safe. Appreciate you. Hopefully we'll catch you in the next video. See ya.